Now, as you know, one of the first things the greatest Prime Minister of all time did was tell us he was the greatest Prime Minister of all time because he was going to do 43% of the work on 1% of the world's climate problems. He was also going to sign us up to more than 80% renewables in the best part of 7 and a bit years. The result of this is what we have always talked about, the cost of transition. Because to build this stuff costs literally $1 trillion. That's not my thinking, that's not the IPA, that is the conclusion of the CSIRO, you know, that far right-wing think tank. Well, the result of that is that the cost of transition has resulted in power prices increasing every quarter, every month, every household, every small business. Now, when you're a politician like Albo and you fly up the front of the plane or you've got your own plane and it's other people's money now and you don't have to pay the power bills, why do you care? Because all of them want to afford not to get angry people on Twitter going on. But here's the latest. Some bills are expected to go up by the best part of, how's this, 83%. All of this kicks off in just a couple of weeks' time when July rolls round. And even Channel 9 noticed this is a bad story.
Standing offers in New South Wales and Queensland will rise from July 1. Household bills in New South Wales up on average over $480 for the year. Queensland prices expected to rise by $400. Small businesses will see jumps of at least 15%.
Of course, these are big increases, but also, as the regulator made clear herself this morning, without the intervention of the Albanese government, they would have been much bigger.
So the people who promised to bring your prices down by $275 are now saying, give us a gold star because they're not going up by as much as they could have. You're kidding me. If you're in small business, we're talking about thousands of dollars each and every quarter, and it's hundreds of dollars extra for families around the country. Families that are struggling, not just the ones on fixed incomes because they are the benefits of welfare recipiency, but these are the people that are the working poor. But shh, don't talk about them. We've got a voice to discuss. So, of course, the suggestion is, well, that's okay, we'll just build more renewables because it's the cheapest form of power, despite the fact that it still costs, I repeat, $1 trillion to build it all and to wire it all up. So the question becomes, would you be willing to have it in your backyard? None of the Teals are planning for windmills where they live. No plans to turn the doggy parks of inner city Sydney or Melbourne into solar panels. No, instead that has to go to the bush.
This seems like an act of environmental vandalism.
They do reduce the value of property and they screw up the tourist industry.
You won't see anything else at that sort of size, and we're talking about 320 metre plus blade height.
We've been terrorised by these things since they've been up.
Terrorised?
Terrorised, that's the way. That's the only way I can put it.
They don't want to come here to see wind turbines, they want to come in and see the natural beauty.
You are seeing here the difference between rhetoric in Canberra and the reality on the ground, particularly in regional Australia. Those of us watching on Sky News Regional know this battle. But it seems that the energy giants have found out a brand new way to make sure that they get what they want and the people in the inner cities can feel even more comfortable about it. Let's just pay landowners more money. Let's just throw more compensation at the issue. Stories today include Mr. Redman, who is one of the bosses of the energy companies. Well, he said that one way to overcome community opposition to big electricity transmission projects in the region was to offer larger payments to farmers, but more transparency and consultation to ease hostility. Now, is this the type of consultation that happened around those power lines in and around Ballarat, where basically the government just moved away from any chance of looking locals in the eye and says it's happening anyway? Consultation. Compensation paid to landowners for building of poles and wires on their property are needed to connect new wind and solar, and it's expected to double at about $400,000 a kilometre. So again, you may be in a scenario where if you're the farmer lucky enough, that's the way to pay you off. But remember here, we are talking about people who will have their lands changed forever. Would you be willing to sell that off for $400,000 a kilometre? This will be a decision that will be made acre by acre around the country. This energy boss goes on to say, so that helps. At another letter, it's a very emotional, confronting change, particularly when you're looking at multi-generational farming, multi-generational ownership of land. So shut up, take the money and disappear. Forget the idea that you want to work on the land. Forget the idea that your community is built around the land. Forget the local small towns that need the people who live on the land to buy the stuff from the shops to keep the communities going. No. The Australian bush is for two things and two things only. Airbnb and investment properties for people in the cities, or places to put the power generation so the people in the cities feel better. This is offensive. And anyone who is affected by this is outraged by it. You need to start to show that you are willing to vote exactly the opposite of the way that you did at the last election if the party that is currently in charge of your seat is anywhere near government. Because their assumption is that basically it doesn't matter and you will just eventually go away. Now remember, what's the plan here? 22,500 watt solar panels every single day are needed for the next 8 years. That's to get us to 2030. 47 megawatt wind turbines every month and an extra 10,000 kilometres of additional transmission lines. Feel free to do the sums here. $400,000 per square kilometre versus 10,000 kilometres, and that's how much compensation before you even start to spend the money on building things. And then our mate Warren Mundine had an interesting perspective, which is the traditional owners, and there's quite a discussion about them at the moment, about the land rights and all the rest. Well, how would they feel about the beautiful bush of this country being carpeted in 22,000 solar panels every day for the next 7 and a bit years? All wind farms, all the cables that connect them. And here's the sting in the tail. Remember how Australia absolutely had to do net zero by 2050, because if we didn't, the EU was going to punish us. Anyone with any capacity to put tariffs on Australia would be willing to do so. And all of the policies that are in place, including this energy madness, is all linked to 2030 and then 2050. You've heard it many times, net zero by 2050.
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 Net zero emissions by 2050.
Net zero by 2050.
Well, surprise, surprise, what do lefties do when they don't like the game? They move the goalposts. And net zero by 2050 is now net zero by 2038. Now think about all of the dramatic things that are due to happen towards 2050, bring it forward by 12 years and supercharge what needs to be done by 2030. This is even though Australia is 1%, I repeat, 1% of the global emissions issue. China is allowed to do whatever the hell it wants till 2030 and its net zero is 2060. No, but Australia, that's 1% of the world's problem, not 20, not 25, not 30%. Has to hurry up and change it all 12 years sooner than they said that we had to.